Hey, what's going on, guys? We are a little over a week away from UFC 297, Sean Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis, and this is going to be my top 3 reasons I love UFC 297. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions, then I'm going to go from 3 to 1, 1 being the reason I'm most looking forward to UFC 297, and this card isn't that great, so this was actually a tough list to compile. But I have a bunch of reasons that I am looking forward to UFC 297. Starting off with my first honorable mention, and that is that Chris Curtis is fighting on the card against Marc-Andre Barriault, and it was elevated to the main card. Now, UFC 297 took a hit. It lost the dead body of Dominic Reyes versus Carlos Ulberg, and I think it lost a couple other fights. Nothing crazy notable, but Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault is a fight that was on the prelims that I felt like was a decent fight that should be on the main card, and it was on the prelims, even though the main card wasn't that good. So I'm very happy that that got elevated to the main card. And of course, you guys know if there's one fighter I'm biased towards in the UFC, it's Chris Curtis. And I think this is a favorable matchup for him. So I'm looking forward to seeing Chris Curtis win on a pay-per-view main card in 2024. And I think it's a phenomenal matchup. Both guys have unbelievable cardio. Both guys are in exciting fights typically. So I love this matchup. I love that Chris Curtis is on the main card. And I also think it's a favorable matchup for Chris Curtis. I think he will get it done at UFC 297. Moving on to my next honorable mention and my last honorable mention. And that is that we will get a fresh 145-pound contender at UFC 297. Opening up the main card, we have Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev. And right now, Arnold Allen is ranked number 3. Movsar Evloev is ranked number 9. And you look at the featherweight division right now. Obviously, we have to wait and see what happens at UFC 298, where we're getting Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. But if Volkanovski wins and beats Topuria, the division is like dead in terms of contenders. But the winner of Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev has never fought Alexander Volkanovski. Arnold Allen was undefeated up until he lost a recent decision to Max Holloway. If Movsar Evloev goes out there, beats Arnold Allen, Movsar Evloev is right up there in title discussions. Look at the division right now. Max Holloway's already lost 3 times to Alexander Volkanovski. Yair just got destroyed last summer by Alexander Volkanovski. Brian Ortega, I know people act like, oh, that was the fight of the year. Alexander Volkanovski beat the brakes off of him in that fight. So Ortega's not close to a title shot, and Ortega has won like 1 fight in the last 10 years. Then you have Ilia Topuria, obviously he's getting a shot. Then you have Josh Emmett, who just recently lost to Yair Rodriguez, but then slept Bryce Mitchell. Then you have Calvin Kattar coming back from an injury against Aljamain Sterling. And then you have Movsar Evloev and Bryce Mitchell. So really, if Volkanovski wins, unless you're kind of cheerleading a potential Max Holloway quadrilogy, the next contender is coming out of Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev. Now, if Ilia Topuria wins, which is a possibility, I know a lot of people are picking Ilia Topuria, then that kind of flips this all on its head, because then the division is rejuvenated. Ilia Topuria could have a litany of different matchups in the division, a bunch of fresh matchups. But if Alexander Volkanovski wins, most likely, really, I don't know what would the other possibility be. If Volkanovski wins this fight pretty cleanly, it's going to be the winner of Arnold Allen, Movsar Evloev, even though Allen only been on a 1-fight winning streak because he lost to Max Holloway, but that's not a horrible loss to have. Max Holloway's so good. And then Movsar Evloev, specifically, if he wins, he'll be 18-0. And I think that's also a very compelling matchup. Even though I think Volkanovski is so good, eventually he's going to have a fall off. And some people are projecting that to be after the KO against Islam Makhachev. Now he's fighting Ilia Topuria. But if it's not that, I want to see some fresh matchups in the featherweight division. So I'm really looking forward to the fact we are going to get a fresh contender at UFC 298. Even if, it's Arnold Allen or Movsar Evloev, even if Ilia Topuria wins, we still have a fresh contender. I remember, I believe it was UFC 270. I have not looked this up, but we were supposed to get undefeated Movsar Evloev versus Ilia Topuria, undefeated Ilia Topuria. And I always dreamed of that fight. It got canceled. One of them got injured, pulled out of the fight. There's a chance, Movsar Evloev goes out there, gets a viral KO. We could see Ilia Topuria versus Movsar Evloev, undefeated matchup in the featherweight division for the title as well. Now, obviously, I think if Volkanovski loses, most likely he gets an immediate rematch, depending on how it happens. But I love this fight. I think this is the second best fight on the card. Arnold Allen, Movsar Evloev. I think it really should be the co-main event, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the contender come out of that fight in the featherweight division. Moving on to my actual list, starting off with number 3, and that is that Juliana Pena is not fighting for the Bantamweight title. I really dislike Juliana Pena. I know people are like, oh, you don't like this fighter, you don't like that fighter, you don't like this fighter. Most of the time, it's not true. It's just people don't like when you criticize their favorite fighters. I actually don't like Juliana Pena. She's delusional. She's annoying. She does nonstop talking. And I mean, what Amanda Nunes did to her in their rematch, I mean, she absolutely decimated her, destroyed her. I think there was a 50-44 scorecard. And Juliana Pena was making all these excuses about, oh, Nunes came in with a different stance and it really threw me off. And I truly believe that Juliana Pena fluked the first victory. And I said that back then. And granted, all the, things were kind of lining up for Juliana Pena to get that win. I think Nunes was kind of checked out. She wasn't taking Pena seriously. And it cost her. She lost. Juliana Pena wins the title. They finally rematch. Amanda Nunes beats the brakes off her from bell to bell. And nobody ever wanted to see that trilogy. Nobody ever wanted to see that trilogy. Well, that trilogy was booked at one point in time. Juliana Pena pulled out with an injury. And then she's still been talking nonstop. Then Nunes beats Irene Aldana. Then retires. Juliana Pena's still talking. And, I thought she would be in the next, women's bantamweight title fight because of the vacated belt, because Juliana Pena, even though she's not a star by any means, you look at the women's bantamweight division, she's one fighter that at least people can remember just because she is outspoken and whatnot. I am so happy she's not in this title fight. I think it would have been a better fight, Juliana Pena versus Mayra Bueno Silva, but I'm just happy Juliana Pena is not getting a shot. I know she'll probably get the next shot, but I'm just tired of hearing her talk. I don't want to hear the lead up to a potential Juliana Pena fight. I don't want to see her abhorrent striking, some of the sloppiest striking I've ever seen in my life. I think her and Juliana Miller trained together with the same striking coach. I mean, who is Juliana Pena's striking coach? There's no way he's like watching her hit the heavy bag and like, yeah, you're really improving. Juliana Pena, I seen the season of The Ultimate Fighter she was on. She has not improved with her striking at all. She just has durability and she has heart. And she's one of the most cringy trash talkers in the UFC. And I'm happy that instead we're getting Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. And I'll add this to kind of this reason as well. I'm happy Mayra Bueno Silva's getting the shot. I know technically she popped for a banned substance, but it had to do with a medical condition. She forgot to, she didn't stop taking it soon enough because it was only in competition banned. It wasn't out of competition banned. And she didn't disclose it and it popped. And I really don't think she should have been penalized for that. And the Holly Holm win is now a no contest. So I'm glad they didn't try to somehow throw Holly Holm into a vacant title fight, which wouldn't shock me, honestly. Nothing the UFC does that shocks me at this point. But I'm happy that even though Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva isn't a phenomenal fight, I'm happy Mayra Bueno Silva's in this fight. She's the one deserving title contender in the women's bantamweight division right now. And I am so happy. Thank you to the MMA gods. We don't have to witness a Juliana Pena trash talk buildup to UFC 297. Moving on to my number 2 reason I am looking forward to UFC 297. Are you guys ready to fall out of your chairs? Because this is kind of a two-part. One, Sean Strickland has been exposed for his massive hypocrisy. But 2, the pre-fight press conference. I cannot wait for the pre-fight press conference. You guys did this to me. I usually don't watch press conferences. I stopped watching press conferences a couple years ago. I wasn't really that big on them when I started the channel. I watched them a little bit then, but I stopped watching them. You guys forced me to watch UFC 296 press conference and then the seasonal press conference. And Dricus Du Plessis brutally exposed Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has talked about people's wives, have talked about people's families, have talked about people who died due to tragic accidents, has made fun of people for crying because they're thinking of their childhood where they considered taking their own life, and Sean Strickland has made fun of them. And Dricus Du Plessis, with one line, broke Sean Strickland. He said, "Your dad has nothing on me." And while I don't think it's right, I do not think it's right to joke about child abuse, which really isn't a joke from Dricus. I think he's being dead serious, by the way. He means that. That's what's going to happen at 297. I don't think you should take child abuse and use it to poke fun or make fun of anyone. But, and I know people are going to say, oh, Joe, you're so hypocritical. You're encouraging Dricus to do this. No, when you walk around with the energy that Sean Strickland walks around with, where you talk about people's families, you talk about people's wives, you talk about dead loved ones, at some point, somebody's going to match that energy. And Dricus Du Plessis matched that energy at the seasonal press conference. And I can't wait to see him do it again in the pre-fight press conference the week of UFC 297. Because since, Dricus called him out on that and Sean got really angry and annoyed, he's gone on Twitter crying and whining about it. He's gone on Theo Von's podcast crying and whining about it. And while I feel bad for him, and I really do believe he needs to go seek help, I really do truly feel bad for Sean Strickland. When you go around being a bully, I have to enjoy that someone finally stood up to the bully. Dricus Du Plessis literally destroyed him with one line, with just one line. And now Strickland's going around crying and whining about it, saying, oh, this should be off limits. This should be off limits. Nobody should be able to. Yeah, when it's you getting picked on, now you have a problem with trash talk. This is a guy, and I played a clip, and I'll link the video down in the description. This is a guy who's encouraged alcoholic rage beatings from people's fathers. He thinks it would make a better world. This is a guy that's advocated for that, Sean Strickland. And now he gets poked a little bit at his trauma, and all of a sudden he goes on a media tour crying and whining. So I can't wait to see Dricus expose him more at the press conference. I can't wait to see Dricus go at him more at the press conference. And I'm actually enjoying this build up, because even though it does seem slightly manufactured, I truly believe there actually is some heat here. I think Strickland is actually really pissed off at Dricus. I mean, that's pretty clear. I don't think Strickland can fake being mad or not. And I actually, contrary to what you guys believe, because I know I always crap on the WWE fans, when there's some real heat, I actually enjoy that in the lead up to a big fight. And Sean Strickland, Dricus Du Plessis is an amazing middleweight title fight. It's a very interesting stylistic clash. And I'm actually enjoying the build-up in the lead-up to UFC 297 as well. So I'm so happy that Du Plessis brutally exposed Sean Strickland. I made an entire video on that. I will link it down in the description if you want to go check it out after this. Moving on to my number one reason I love UFC 297, and that is that Joe Rogan will not be on commentary. I am so happy that Rogan's not on commentary. UFC 297 will be in Canada. Joe Rogan only commentates pay-per-views that are in the United States. I am so happy we don't Joe Rogan's a casual, guys. He's a casual. He's not what he once was. And I know people are like, how dare you hate on Joe Rogan? He's been around forever. How dare you call him a casual? The reason I'm so disappointed with Joe Rogan's decline is because I witnessed him in his prime. There was a time back in 2013, back in 2014, back in 2015, where I was disappointed if Rogan missed a commentary role on a pay-per-view. I was disappointed. And he's declined so much, and he's made the pay-per-views less enjoyable to watch. All he does is scream, oh, oh, that's all he does. That's his only commentary, basically. You could literally replace Joe Rogan with a soundboard. You could replace him with a soundboard right now. I could replace him with a soundboard. Oh, yeah, these calf kicks have really revolutionized the game. Or what about speculating on every injury? Yeah, the way he's holding that right hand. Oh, yeah, the way he's holding that left pinky toe. I think he's compromised. I think he's compromised. I think he's compromised. That's all he does. And all Joe Rogan is good for now is showing up, not knowing jack shit. He doesn't even know what fighters' weight classes are. Roman Khabibulov, shout out Roman Khabibulov, doesn't even know he's in the middleweight division. And then Joe Rogan, all he's good for is showing up and overreacting. Oh, oh, and popping his eyes out of his head because he knows the cameras are on him. That's all Rogan is good for. And he comes in with the most biased commentary ever. Not for every fight, but some fights he comes in with a preconceived storyline that he cannot deviate from. It doesn't matter what he sees. Doesn't matter what he sees, he cannot deviate from that narrative, that preconceived notion that he's already come in with, and it sways the fans, and it drives me nuts. So whatever narrative Rogan's on, all the casual fans are like, Joe Rogan said it, it must be true. Joe Rogan said it, it must be true. Or what about him constantly, I've already made a whole video about this and Rogan's commentary being horrible. What about every time there's a low blow, Rogan has to watch the replay and say it wasn't a low blow, even though it's clearly coming in contact with the cup. But because that's not the significant initial impact, it's not a low blow to Joe Rogan, even though it clearly touches the cup. I'm not talking about ones that are kind of speculative. I'm talking about the ones that maybe like glance off a leg and then clearly hit the cup. Rogan's like, well, that's not where it hit, or it hit the belt line and it didn't really actually hit the cup, even though it clearly hit the cup in the video. And he just harps on him and harps on him and harps on him. Or what about when, he did the post-fight presser, or not post-fight presser, post-fight interview in the cage with Jan Blachowicz after the Magomed Ankalaev loss or draw. And he's basically convincing Jan Blachowicz that he lost the fight, even though it was a draw. And I think a draw was a very fair scorecard. But he's there pressing Jan Blachowicz like, yeah, you don't believe you won this fight, do you? You think you lost. You think we should give the title to Magomed Ankalaev? And he's just pressing him and pressing him and pressing him. There's so many things about Joe Rogan. I'm so tired of hearing it. I'm tired of his commentary, and I am so thankful at UFC 297, we don't have to deal with Joe Rogan's commentary. I'm telling you right now, one of the best commentators for the UFC, Laura Senko. I think she has the best commentary for the UFC right now. And I know people aren't going to like that. I know they aren't going to like that. But she's really good. Paul Felder's really good. Dominic Cruz used to be good, but he's fallen off. I don't know who the commentators are. I know Bisping's horrible as well. I don't know who the commentators are going to be for UFC 297, but I do know one thing. It's not going to be Joe Rogan. And in my opinion, that makes UFC 297 that much better. And that's why I'm looking forward to UFC 297. Let me know what you guys think of my reasons down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.